Om Jnanatirmirandasya Gnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namah.
So chanting of the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra serves as a basis for all other forms of devotional service, all 63 main forms of devotional service. So without the ingredient of chanting properly, it is not possible to strive and advance forward in Krishna consciousness with any of the other 63 forms of devotional service and attain Krishna Prema. So I'll explain to you how that is achieved in this verse, hopefully, and based on what the Shastras and Acharyas say. So let's start off with today's verse, and this is from Canto 1, called Creation. So this verse is spoken by Srila Goswami in the forest of Naimisharanya to the sages of Naimisharanya. So you can repeat after me, the first line. Shanvatam Svakatam Krishna
Shanvatam Swakata Krishna
Punya Shravana Kirtana
Punya Shravana Kirtana
Hidayantasto Hi Patrani
Hridayantasto Hi Abhrani
Vidnoti Suhit Chatam.
Vidnoti Satam.
So here's the word for word transliteration. Shanavatam, those who have developed the urge to hear the message of. So you can repeat, those who have developed the urge to hear the message of. Svakata, his own words. Krishna, the personality of Godhead. Punya, virtues. Shravan, hearing. Kirtana, chanting. Hridayanta, within one's heart. He, certainly. Abhadrani, desire to enjoy matter. Vidonati, cleanses. Suhit, benefactor. Satam, of the truthful. Translation. Sri Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, please repeat.
Sri Krishna
Who is the Paramatma, Super Soul, in everyone's heart, and the benefactor of truthful devotee. Cleanses desire from material enjoyment in the heart of the devotee. Who has developed the urge to hear his messages, which are in themselves virtuous, and properly heard and chanted. So I'll just repeat the translation again in complete. Sri Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is the Paramatma, Super Soul in everyone's heart, and a benefactor of the truthful devotee, cleanses desire for material enjoyment from the heart of the devotee, who has developed the urge to hear his messages, which are in themselves virtuous when properly heard and chanted. So the importance of hearing is stressed twice in this verse. So we'll read the purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Messages of the personality of God as Sri Krishna are non-different from him. Whenever, therefore, offenseless hearing and glorification of God are undertaken, it is to be understood that Lord Krishna is present there in the form of transcendental sound, which is as powerful as the Lord personally. Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu in the Shikshashtaka declares clearly that the holy name of the Lord has all the potencies of the Lord, and that He has endowed His innumerable names with the same potency. There's no rigid fixture of time, and anyone can chant the holy name with attention and reverence at his convenience. The Lord is so kind to us that He can be present before us personally in the form of transcendental sound. But unfortunately, we have no taste for hearing and glorifying the Lord's name activities. We've already discussed and developed a taste for hearing and chanting in the holy name earlier. It is done through the medium of service to the pure devotee of the Lord. The Lord has reciprocally responded to His devotees. When the Lord sees that a devotee is completely sincere in getting admittance to the transcendental service of the Lord within the devotee in such a way that the devotee may easily go back to Him. The Lord is more anxious to take us back in His kingdom than we can desire. Most of us do not desire at all to go back to Godhead. Only a very few men want to go back to Godhead, and women, of course. Women and men want to go back to Godhead. But anyone who desires to go back to God, Shri Krishna helps in all respects. One cannot enter into the kingdom of God unless one is perfectly cleansed or cleared of all sins. Material sins are products of our desires to lord it over material nature. It is very difficult to get rid of such desires. Women and wealth are very difficult problems for the devotee making progress in the path back to Godhead. Many stalwarts in the devotional line fell victim to these allurements and thus retreated from the path of liberation. And when one is helped by the Lord himself, the whole process can easily become anything by the divine grace of the Lord. So, a few days ago, there was a very, very important day in ISKCON, and that was the day when Srila Prabhupada arrived on the shores of New York City. So you know that he took great pains and sacrificed much to leave the comforts of Vrindavan Dham to simply come here to the shores of North America and start the ISKCON movement over 40 years ago. So part 2 of this class is titled Give Your Life to Srila Prabhupada, and explain how we can do that from hearing and chanting properly. Now this verse is very important because this verse actually falls right one verse before another important verse known in the Bhagavatam, known as Nasta Prayashtu Abhreteshu, and it goes Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya, and so on. So basically what that means is that if one renders pure devotional service to devotee of the Lord and attends the Bhagavatam class regularly, then what will happen is that all the miseries in his heart will almost all completely clear away. And the word almost is very, very important, and we'll explain why later in the verse. So all the miseries in the heart are almost cleared away. And by doing so, one develops personal love for Supreme Personality Godhead, and that love is irrevocable. So the last line of the verse, it basically reads, Bhaktir Bhavavati Nashtikam. Nashtikam basically means that something that one cannot take back is irrevocable. So by attending Bhagavatam class regularly, by serving Srimad Bhagavatam, by reciting and hearing it, or Bhagavatam also meaning, as says by the purport by Srila Prabhupada, Bhagavatam meaning pure devotee, which is synonymous with Bhagavatam, one can go back to God and develop the pure love. So hearing is actually a science. So as last time we explained, science is something that is determined by facts and explained by facts. So a science that we learn in class or university is actually not science, but it is actually fallacy, because why? The theories keep changing from time to time. The science of the Vedas is something that was spoken many, many millions of years ago, and will continue to be spoken and will never change. Why? Because it actually emanates from the lotus mouth of the Supreme Lord. So therefore, it is a science. It is known in the first verse that the first devotee of the Lord was Adi Kavi, that is known as Brahma. So in the first verse of the Srimad Bhagavatam, it says, Tena Brahma Hede Adi Kavi. So basically that means that Brahma actually heard this Shabd Brahman from Lord Krishna, and this is passed down from generations to generations through the parampara. So why is hearing and chanting the most important of all the 9 processes of devotional service? We explained that last time, that is because Lord Brahma heard it first from Lord Krishna many, many millions of years ago as Shabd Brahma. So the first thing that Brahma actually did was to hear Tapa, and that's why hearing is very important. And that's how he became attached to devotional service. In ISKCON or in other sampradayas or other bona fide sampradayas, when you take initiation, the Guru actually gives you the devotional service to the sound, through the medium of sound. When you take our first initiation, he gives us Harinam Diksha, and we get second initiation, he gives us the Gayatri Mantra. So it's always through the process of sound. So sound is very, very important. The other important, why hearing is more important than chanting, is because we have 2 ears and 1 mouth. Okay? Otherwise we'd have 2 mouths and 1 ear. So hearing is as important, if not more so, than chanting. And of course we know that unless we hear the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra from a devotee, we cannot chant it, right? It makes sense. So unless we hear what is a Maha Mantra or any other mantra, we cannot actually chant it. So hearing comes first. And as we quoted many, many verses from Srimad Bhagavatam, there are over 30 to 40 verses throughout all the 18 chapters of Srimad Bhagavad Gita that explain the importance of hearing. And we discussed them last time. So today we'll discuss what is attentive hearing. So we discussed why hearing is important, but what is the meaning of attentive hearing? Okay, so attentive hearing will explain who should hear and from whom one should hear. And then the large part of the lecture will focus on the techniques for attentive hearing. Now, first of all, I want to inform you that that this topic of attentive hearing is a very vast topic and it's not possible to cover this in the span of half an hour. But I'll just touch upon the surface, scratch the surface, and hopefully we'll have the opportunity in other classes by wonderful devotees of this wonderful center to explain the importance of attentive hearing. Now, why should we focus on the importance of hearing? Well, we know that when we chant, inattentive hearing is the root cause of all the 10 offenses, right from the time that we blaspheme a devotee, right from the time that we do not take instructions as to why you should give up material desires, which is the 10th offense. So the root cause of these offenses is because we do not chant attentively. So therefore it is said, and after we chant the 10 offenses after Mangalarti, we actually say that it's also an offense to chant inattentively because one who claims to be a Vaishnava strives to get rid of this offense and therefore achieve the desired success, which is Krishna Prema. So therefore, attentive chanting is very, very important. And only because of attentive chanting, suppose if we be careful not to commit any of the 10 offenses, but if we chant non-attentively or inattentively, we will not achieve Krishna Prema. That's why it says in the last line that to achieve Krishna Prema, one must chant attentively, even if you're not committing any of the 10 offenses. Now, we know that there are many reasons why people may be inattentive, but they're basically classified into three categories. We won't go into them because that's another class, but essentially it's due to lack of desire or distraction, it's due to some laziness, or due to indifference. That is, one does not understand the importance of chanting. So there's three main classes of inattentive chanting. And as you said earlier, 99% of Krishna consciousness consists of chanting properly. That's what Srila Prabhupada says. So one may ask, who should hear? Like, who should be hearing this chanting? Well, anyone is qualified to hear. There's no actual qualification, as Chaitanya Mahaprabhu says. And as he came over 500 years ago, he actually distributed freely to all living entities, not only to people in the human form, but also to all living entities. And he's passing through the Jharkhand forest, etc. So therefore, this chanting is available to everyone else. And we know that from Srila Prabhupada's purport, he gave a purport in the Vishnu songbook about the Hare Krishna Mantra, what actually is the Hare Krishna Mantra. And he says, as follows, he says that we have seen this practically. Even a child can take part in the chanting, or even a dog can take part in it, as we famously know. So we know from wonderful stories from Chaitanya Charitamrita, there's once a dog in the company of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, and when he ate the coconut pulp, he was basically liberated and did not see him the next day. So even a dog who takes part in this chanting can be liberated. And we know of many, many other stories from Srimad Bhagavatam and other wonderful scriptures of how non-humans were liberated when they chanted the Mahamantra purely. So, who shall we hear from? And hearing from the proper source is very, very important. And Prabhupada says this later on in the same purport. He says that the greatest efficacy from the hearer and this chanting should be heard from the lips of the pure devotee of the Lord, so that immediate effect can be achieved. As far as possible, chanting from the lips of non-devotees should be avoided, just as milk touched by the lips of a serpent should be avoided because of its poisonous effect. So sometimes we're very, very fortunate that we have wonderful ISKCON preachers come to Toronto, but sometimes we also have people that are coming from the Holy Dham proclaiming themselves preachers. We should be very careful that we hear from the proper source. Not to say that they may not also be bona fide, but we should be careful what is the background and what is the intent of preaching. Now, one thing is that when people come and talk about the 10th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam in their Bhagavad Sapta, that is 7 days of talking about Bhagavatam, we should be very, very careful, especially with that, because the 10th canto, as we know, is the face of Lord Krishna. That is, as we go right from the first canto, which is the feet and toes of Lord Krishna, right up to the 12th canto, which is the crown, the glorious crown of Lord Krishna. The face of Lord Krishna is the 10th canto, and his smile is actually the 5 chapters of the Rasa Leela. But when people actually talk about the Rasa Leela publicly in the open, then that is potentially offensive. Why? Is because this is actually reserved to people that have gone through all the first 9 cantos and studied them properly, and only then is the 10th canto available only for special meetings or congregations. So that is not for public declaration, so we should be very careful. So in times when these people actually come, we should question ourselves, well, what is the difference between what is actually explained in the 10th canto and what's going on in the 1st and 2nd cantos, or any other canto for that matter. Why? Because Krishna is absolute, so his pastimes are absolute. So one should not be very eager to hear about the 10th canto unless they've carefully understood the first 9 cantos. Okay, so as I said earlier, this is a very, very important week because this is the week of the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra. And on the last day, we actually glorified the appearance, or the actual day when Prabhupada stepped on the shores of New York City. That occurred last Thursday. So we know that Srila Prabhupada left the comforts of Vrindavan Dham to come here basically because he had a mission to fulfill. He had the prophecy of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu to fulfill, Lord Krishna to fulfill, Lord Brahma predicted his coming, and also more recently Bhaktivinoda Thakur predicted his coming. So Srila Prabhupada had a mission to fulfill. So he left on Friday, August 13th. So that's actually a very special day. We think of Friday the 13th as being an inauspicious day, but actually Friday the 13th is a very auspicious day because that is the day that Srila Prabhupada actually left Calcutta on August 13th, on Friday. So you know that his ship ride on the Jaladuta took about 37 days, and on that time, when he crossed the Bay of Bengal, he suffered many, many difficulties during the time that he actually was on his voyage. He got seasick, he had fever, he also, when he was going through the Red Sea, he had chest pain, and he barely made through 2 heart attacks. So he actually did this as a sacrifice for the people of this world. But he finally arrived at Boston on September 17th, 1965, stayed there for a few hours, and then the ship then left for New York City, where he came off the ship and then basically went to Butler, Pennsylvania, as we know. It's actually interesting to note that the same ship, when it went back, 2 of his devotees actually boarded the ship and went back to India to get some things from India. And these 2 devotees were Kirtananda Maharaj and Hayagriva Prabhu. So these actually devotees who later did not know about Srila Prabhupada, and it said in one of the lectures of Radhanath Swami that these 2 devotees actually boarded the ship when it went back to Calcutta. And then when they got the paraphernalia, they actually came back to New York City and they met Srila Prabhupada and so forth. So that actually shows that these devotees were actually not connected to Srila Prabhupada after he initiated them, but they were connected to them long before. Okay, so at the time that Srila Prabhupada actually left Calcutta, it is said that he did not have a glorious send-off. Like, for example, when we go somewhere, or arrive somewhere, we're expecting garlands, a conch, and, people to, do kirtan and so forth. No, that's not true. But when Prabhupada, such a wonderful personality, left Calcutta, he only had 5 people to see him off. There are 4 people that were listed in one of the books called Memories of Srila Prabhupada, the Andoksa Modern Day Saint, and his son, his youngest son, Vrindavan Charan Day. He was there to see his father off. And someone interviewed him and he said that, how did you feel when your father actually left on his mission? He said that I had tears in my eyes, and I was very proud of him because he knew that he was going to fulfill a great mission. But when he arrived on the shores of New York City, we know that there was no one to receive him. He says in the Prabhupada Lingamrita by Satsvarupa Das Goswami Maharaj, he actually says that when he actually left the ship, he did not know whether to turn right or left. And we know that someone was sent by Mr. Agarwal, who was the family that received him from Butler, Pennsylvania. He actually sent someone from Traveler's Aid to take Srila Prabhupada. And actually what happened was that when that Traveler's Aid person met Srila Prabhupada, when Prabhupada disembarked from the ship, he actually took him to the office, the Sindhi office, and that's where Prabhupada actually told him that he was actually going to come back to India in 2 months. So his actual intent was to come back in 2 months' time back to India. But we know that never actually happened. And we're very, very thankful to Prabhupada that actually never happened, otherwise we wouldn't be here today. But his desire was, his actually idea, maybe not desire, but his idea was actually to come back in 2 months back to India. So we know that Srila Prabhupada actually gave his life to us, okay? So the question that I beg from you is, why not give this one life to Srila Prabhupada? So we know that in a very, very famous verse spoken between Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and Rupa Goswami, he says, Hey Rupe, Brahmananda Brahmite Kone Bhagavan Jiva. So he says that in this whole Anda, this universe which is shaped like an egg, Brahmanda, this universe of Lord Brahma, Brahmite, that means we're wandering up and down, this escalator from one planet to another planet in different forms of life. But somehow or another, in one of these lifetimes, we actually come in contact with a devotee or a group of devotees. So we're very, very fortunate that in this very, very rare form of the human form, out of the 8.4 million species, we actually come in contact with a devotee who's actually brought us to Krishna consciousness. So this devotee was actually sent by a devotee of the devotee of Srila Prabhupada, or by Srila Prabhupada himself, as many people have been fortunate to meet him, or through his books, or through other means of devotional service. So therefore, if Prabhupada has given us this lifetime, and we're very fortunate because Prabhupada actually appeared hardly 40 years ago, 45 years ago, and before him, 450 years ago, Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu appeared, and 500 years ago, 5,000 years ago, Lord Krishna appeared. So we're actually very fortunate that in this Kalpa, in this day of Brahma, we have actually appeared. So therefore, we should take full advantage of this Krishna consciousness movement. So in these many million lifetimes, and we do not know how many lifetimes we've actually spent, going up and down this ladder between the universes, why not make this lifetime the one that you're going to dedicate to Srila Prabhupada and go back to Godhead? Why? Because he's actually dedicated this lifetime for you. So it is incumbent on us to dedicate this lifetime to Srila Prabhupada. So I'll explain to you how this is possible in this class by the process of hearing. So in no particular order, I'll give you some of the techniques of attentive chanting and how we can learn properly. Why? Because if we improve our chanting and chant attentively, then we'll commit less offense and we'll develop Krishna praying and go back to God in this lifetime. So we know that there are 5 knowledge-acquiring senses. There are 3 S's and 2 T's, basically meaning there's taste and touch, and there's sound, smell, and seeing, okay? The sound and seeing are the 2 most important of the 5 knowledge-acquiring senses, okay? Why? Because they have the most effect on our consciousness. For example, if someone commits a crime in front of you and you witness it, you will not forget that, right? Because it's something that you're seeing and hearing at the same time. You do not have to smell the crime, you do not have to touch the person who committed the crime, or taste the crime. It's not possible to do that. But you're seeing and hearing it, so you're a witness to the crime. That's why in court you may be called as a witness. Okay? Similarly, if you go to a hypnotist, what does he do? What does a hypnotist do? How does he get you under his control? Well, it's through the mode of seeing and sound. He says, okay, he puts a watch in front of you and basically makes you stare at the watch. So you're using your sound, your sense of sight and sense of sound. So he says you're going to fall asleep, and you're going to fall sleepy, are you falling sleepy? And then slowly he gets you under his control. So sound and sight are the 2 most important forms of knowledge acquiring. And that's why it's very important to develop them properly. The second thing is that one must have interest and faith in chanting. If one has no interest in faith, then it's not possible to chant properly. So the example that one gives is, for example, when a girl gets married, what happens that, the mother-in-law actually says, come to the kitchen and let me show you how to cook. But if this poor girl does not have any interest in cooking, then she'll not become a successful cook, and her husband won't be happy. So the idea is that one must be actually interested in what we're doing. Unless we have any interest, we cannot develop faith, or nishta is very, very important, or shraddha. That's right. So the other important thing to remember is that one must actually surrender to this process of chanting, okay? And there's many, many areas of surrender that's given in the Shastras, one of which is in the book called the book by Sanatana Goswami, Bhakti Samhita Sundar, that's the one. It's actually written by Sanatana Goswami and also by Gopal Bhatta Goswami. So they actually say in that book, the 6 processes of surrender. We won't go into the 6 processes, but the first thing that one should do is one should accept what is favorable for Krishna consciousness. That is known as anukulyasya sankalpa. Okay, that means we must accept things very eagerly that are favorable for Krishna consciousness. At the same time, we must throw out the garbage. So when we go to the store, we accept things that are favorable for offering the deities, but once we use those things, those items have to be discarded. The cart has to be thrown away in the garbage, and we throw away the refuse the next day. That's known as pratikulyasya Vajana or Vivarjana. Vajana basically means to reject those things that are not favorable to Krishna consciousness. So in chanting, we must accept things that are favorable and reject things that are not favorable. So how do we develop this attachment or this process of surrender? We can only do this by associating with like-minded people. So that's why sadhu sangha is very, very important. That is a missing ingredient when one is chanting. Why? Because we need a foundation, and we can get that foundation very, very quickly by associating with devotees, advanced devotees who are doing this day in and day out. By seeing how they're doing this, we can achieve quick success. Now, a question is often asked is, how do we judge the character of a person? We can judge the character of the person by the friends he keeps. So if our friends and associates are advanced devotees, then we can judge the character of that person very, very nicely. If that person is associating with non-devotees, then we know that that person is not very interested in Krishna consciousness, and his progress in advancement in Krishna consciousness will be very slow and thwarted. So far I've explained to you some of the basics of preparation for chanting Krishna consciousness. Now I'll go into the actual techniques, okay? What are the actual mechanics of chanting properly? So the actual mechanics of chanting properly happen the night before. Okay, what does that mean? So it's very important that when we're planning on chanting our rounds very nicely in the morning, we should actually take a sankalpa. That is sankalpa meaning an acceptance or a promise. We must make a promise the night before that we're going to, take rest early, sleep a minimum of 6 hours or whatever you need to achieve good rest, and you must wake up early. So that actually takes place the night before. So as they say, eat light at night and awake early light. Okay, that means if you eat right at night, you'll wake light early in the morning. Okay, and you should prepare yourself. So when you're getting ready for sleep, you should say, okay, Krishna, please help me chant my rounds properly in the morning, so I can fulfill my desire of coming back to you and serving you nicely. So you make some promise to Lord Krishna. The other important thing is the time, place, and circumstance, which is another lecture. So time, place, and circumstance is very important. For example, one must wake up early in the morning during the Brahma Muhurta time. So Muhurta basically means 48 minutes. That's the time according to Vedic calculations. So Brahma Muhurta is 2 times 48 minutes, which is 96 minutes, which is about 1.5 hours before sunrise. So Brahma Muhurta time is a very, very auspicious time. Why? Because at that time, for many reasons, but to explain this very, very briefly, at that time, the acharyas and the demigods are chanting, so why not chant alongside with them? Also, you get full blessings from Lord Krishna. You actually get empowered during that time. During the Brahma Muhurta time, you actually get empowered to chant purely. So it's very, very important to chant during that time and take full benefit of that. Also, one should sit up straight when they're chanting, because we know that from the famous class or japa tape of Srila Prabhupada, he once caught a devotee saying, sit properly. So that devotee actually one time came to Vrindavan, and in Vrindavan or other temples, they play this tape, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, sit properly. So this devotee actually came to Vrindavan and he said, you know what, I was that person that Prabhupada told me to sit properly. So then he explained the story. He said that one time, I think he was in LA, he was chanting from the Prabhupada, and Prabhupada was chanting the round, and this devotee actually started to, Yoga Nidra started to hit him. He started to fall asleep. So what happened is that he was cross-legged, but eventually his legs became straight, and Prabhupada took notice of that but didn't say anything, but slowly his upper body started to tilt down towards the ground, so he's eventually almost 180 degrees. So when Prabhupada saw that, he said so properly, and he's never slept after that. So it's very, very important that when we're chanting, we should sit properly. Why? Because at that time our consciousness is full. And that's why when we take a rest, we actually cannot take a rest standing, we actually have to take a lying down, because our bodily functions and hormones actually allow us to sleep better when you're lying down than sitting up. And the classic example is that in a plane, it's not possible to sleep in a plane properly, you must have full rest. That's why you should go by business class. Okay. So, someone once asked Prabhupada, what would please you the most? Of all the process of devotional service, someone asked him, what would please you the most? So the most common reply, as you know, and this is plastered all over major temples, is distribute my books. So that's something that pleases Prabhupada the most. But another thing that pleases Prabhupada the most is he said that I'll be very pleased if you chant your 16 rounds without interruption in one sitting. So if you do that, starting tomorrow, that is chant your 16 rounds without any interruption in the morning, you'll please Prabhupada. Okay, so that's his desire. Now, when people go to Vrindavan, sometimes you meet, people from other sampradayas. Like, for example, the common example is from the Gaudiya Math Sampradaya. So these people from Gaudiya Math like to ask people questions. Their most common question is, well, how many rounds do you chant? How many rounds in one sitting do you chant? How many rounds do you chant per day? So these are all very, very important questions, because they don't ask how are you, they ask how is your bhajan. So when you actually associate with an advanced devotee, the advanced devotee will ask you, how's your bhajan rather than how are you doing. Why? Because he's concerned about your Krishna consciousness rather than your material body. So one of the things that they commonly ask you is like, Prabhuji, do you cook for yourself, or how do you take your prasad? So you should make sure you tell them, well, what I do is I cook the prasad and offer to my deity. So what they're trying to get at is that, one's consciousness has a bearing on the effect of chanting, okay? Why? Because if we honor non-prasad, of course, that can have a negative effect on our sadhana, on our chanting sadhana. And also when we take non-Ekadashi, that's very bad, right? Because we know from class lectures that we get all the sins, even greater than committing the sin of Brahmana, if we eat grains on Ekadashi. So therefore, we have to be very, very careful. That is, when we are honoring prasadam, it should be cooked by ourselves and offered to the deity. And if it's not possible, then your spouse or partner should be able to do that. So it's very, very important to eat prasadam, to cultivate proper chanting. The other important thing is that one should announce the Maha Mantra very carefully. When you're chanting the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra, we should, of course, have a quiet environment. And the importance of a quiet environment is important because we do not become distracted. So distraction is something that, at least for me, is very easy. Why? Because then I start thinking of other things. Distraction is one of the key causes of inattentive chanting. So that's why we're chanting the time of Brahma Murta. And we should make an attempt that we have no other disruptions. We don't answer a cell phone. If the phone rings, we don't jump up and answer it. Hopefully no one will call us 5 o'clock in the morning unless it's some emergency or some other important reason. So we should select that time. We should not stop and then say, oh, I have an email. So we should try to park all these thoughts. Park basically means put these thoughts aside and finish your chanting, okay? Now suppose if we cannot, for a practical reason, if we cannot put these thoughts aside, then the Acharya suggests that we should stop chanting, get up, take care of that thing, get rid of the thing, write it down quickly. Okay, well, I'm meeting at 9 o'clock and I forgot to prepare this point. So write it down quickly and then get back to your chanting. So if you cannot get the thought out of your mind, you should get, despite many attempts, you should take care of that and then get back to your chanting again so that it won't continue to haunt you. The other important thing is, we know from Acharyas, a quiet room is very, very important. Why? Because then we can focus much more clearly on the chanting. The example is given by Bhaktivinoda Thakur. For example, if you go to his house in Godrunaweep, he actually had a room, a properly constructed room in which he would chant his rounds. Why? Because he would not get disturbed. We know from the Vaishnava Acharyas, the Goswamis of Vrindavan, for example, Sanatana Goswami and Bhagarva Goswami, these two beneath the ground and chant the rounds. That's how Bhagarva Goswami got his name. Bhu means earth, and Garba means in the womb of the earth, in the ground. So he used to chant his rounds 20 feet underground in a deserted snake hole. So why? Because they understood the importance of chanting. So chanting is actually something that has to be worked at. It is something that should not be considered as something that's, oh, I have to chant my rounds. No, one should make a conscious effort to chant his rounds and chant them very, very nicely. And if you do that, you'll find that very quickly your taste for Krishna consciousness will increase immensely, very, very quickly. So, last of all, we did not touch upon this, but it's very important, is that Prabhupada said that when we chant, we should do it in the form of a child, one who's crying for his mother. So when we're chanting, we should do it in a state of helplessness. That is, Krishna, I am not qualified to chant your rounds properly, but please help me. And one time I asked a pure devotee, like, what is the way to chant your rounds properly? So he basically said, it's very simply, is that you should ask Krishna for help. I was actually looking for a detailed philosophical answer, and all he said was, just pray to Krishna and ask for help to chant your rounds. And then I thought, that's very simple, But then, much later, I realized that yes, that is true. One should actually just ask Krishna, please help me chant this round properly. And he'll give you the necessary requisite and the intelligence to do so. So while it may seem, very difficult in the beginning, it actually becomes very easy. If one actually chants the rounds in a state of humility, and it's said that when we are actually chanting, we should actually chant the third Shikshastakam prayers, okay? That is, one should develop a mood of humility, tolerance. One should take away his pride. And the fourth thing is one should offer respect to all others and respect none for himself, okay? So those are the elements of the third verse of Shikshastakam. So if you think of that third verse of Shikshastakam before you're chanting our rounds will become much more easy to do and will remain very attentive. So in closing, I want to simply say that let's not forget the immense sacrifice that Srila Prabhupada made for us by coming to the West, and then from the West he spread the movement all over the world. He basically sacrificed his energy, otherwise he could have gone to some other planet on some other universe and disputed this process. In fact, that's what he's doing right now, I'm sure. Because as a pure devotee, pure devotees, their only business is to liberate the conditioned fallen souls. So we're very fortunate that within such a short span of time, we've been under the shadow or the umbrella of Srila Prabhupada's mercy that we can chant very, very nicely. So let's take full advantage of this opportunity and education and heritage that Prabhupada provided us and chant our rounds very, very nicely. So in closing, what I'll do is I'll share with you two stories because I like to share with some stories, some nectar, and then we'll finish off with the class as I have to leave a bit early today. So this is a story from one of the books by Satsarupa Das Goswami. It's called Prabhupada Nectar, and I'm sure some of you have seen this book. But these are some wonderful pastimes of Srila Prabhupada. So this first story is about the title that I've given this story is that one should follow, not imitate. So when you're chanting, for example, we know that a lot of devotees actually chant, let's say, 32 rounds in the beginning, and then, okay, Prabhu or Mother, what did you do next? Oh, I chanted 4 rounds, and then next week come back, I chanted 1 round. So it's very careful that when we chant, in the beginning, we do not set a high level. We should chant such that we chant 16 rounds, and when you say 16 rounds, we must be chanting 16 rounds, whether you're new to ISKCON or whether you've been in ISKCON for many years. 16 rounds is the standard for anything. Just like, for example, every year as citizens of Canada, we have to pay tax, or whether you're a resident or a citizen, we have to pay tax, so that is a standard. That is a standard you cannot do without. So similarly, to be a Krishna consciousness devotee, if you call yourself a Krishna consciousness, one should be chanting 16 rounds without fail, no matter what. So here's an example of a story in Mayapur. One time when Prabhupada was in Mayapur, a disciple of his came from Africa with the intention of performing extreme austerities in the Holy Dham. Instead of living in the residential building, the devotee from Africa stayed in a small hut near a field of banana trees. He was chanting 120 rounds of japa a day, sleeping 2 hours a day, and taking only a small bit of prasad. Prabhupada knew of the boy's presence in the Dham, but first of all, he said nothing publicly. But one morning when Prabhupada was walking around the pond, one of the devotees mentioned the latest austere practices of the devotee from Africa. Some of the devotees had been impressed, since they knew how difficult it was to chant so many rounds and to sleep and eat so little. Srila Prabhupada, said one of the devotees, this boy is now increasing his chanting, and he's not associating with anyone, so that he won't engage in any idle talk. Yes, said Prabhupada non-committally, he wanted to live on the river. Srila Prabhupada, now he wants to live in a tree. Then Prabhupada revealed his mind. He said, all nonsense, he said, and he waved his hand, dismissing the whole endeavor. As soon as you say, I want, it is all sense gratification, all nonsense. Srila Prabhupada, keep chanting. Then last of all, this title is called Misused Intelligence, okay? Misused intelligence. So in Australia, Prabhupada was talking to a room full of guests. He spoke of misused intelligence. He said that people in the human form of life have the opportunity for spiritual realization, and yet they are simply misusing their intelligence. Srila Prabhupada spoke and talked about what's being recorded by several tape recorders, and microphones were propped up on the desk before him. The mood was serious, just as in a formal lecture, and Prabhupada was intent on his deliverance of Krishna consciousness to the people. In the midst of the talk, a newly initiated brahmachari disciple went forward to give Prabhupada a goblet of water. The goblet was a fancy one with a small base and a large opening. It had been placed upside down on the silver tray along with a pitcher of ice water. Not upside down. The brahmachari nervously placed the tray on Prabhupada's table while everyone watched him and waited. Not perceiving that the glass was upside down, the boy somehow thought that the base was actually a funnel in which he would pour the water. As he started pouring, the water splashed over the base of the goblet and onto the desk. What is that? Said Prabhupada. There's water, Prabhupada, to the brahmachari disciple. By now, several people in the audience rose to help the situation, but no one was laughing. Rather, there was a pained embarrassment that such a strange thing had happened in Prabhupada's presence. Finally, the boy sat down again and Srila Prabhupada recommenced lecture. Misused intelligence of Prabhupada, and the audience laughed with him, appreciating his wit and his ability to relieve the awkward moment. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. So we'll conclude the lecture. I just have to go to another program, so thank you so much for your kind attention, and we pray that we'll get the blessings and the mercy of Srila Prabhupada chant our rounds very attentively tomorrow morning. Thank you so much. Hare Krishna.